Welcome to the Resilient Relationships Talkshow with Drs. Christian and Caroline Heim. We discuss the science of relationships and give you evidence-based techniques to help your relationship thrive.
Hello, I'm Dr. Christian Heim, psychiatrist.
And hello, I'm Dr. Caroline Heim, and I'm an associate professor. And welcome to episode number 10 of our Resilient Relationships Talk Show.
And Caroline, what are we talking about today?
Well, today's topic is forgiveness in relationships.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, no need to apologise.
All right, so as always, we'll be giving you some science, we'll be giving you some stories, and we'll be giving you some solutions, techniques, and tips so that you can make, based on the evidence, forgiveness more of a reality in your relationship.
So we'll be giving you an overview of forgiveness in couples therapy. We'll also be giving you some stories from the couples that we interviewed in our Resilient Relationships study that talked about forgiveness as part of conflict resolution, actually, and some techniques from Christian's book that he's written on forgiveness, How to Using Neuroplasticity. So I've looked at some studies and ideas. Christian's written a book, but I think we actually first need to start out with a definition. What is forgiveness?
What is forgiveness? That's a big question. Okay, so because it's a big question, we're going to the guru of forgiveness therapy, psychologist Robert Enright, who basically gives this definition. Now, I've worded it so that we can get a handle on it. So, when you've been hurt, forgiveness is trying to overcome your anger and your resentment by trying to give the other person compassion, kindness, and love.
Trying. So it's about trying, is it?
Well, that's actually a big part of the definition because forgiveness is a process. It's not somewhere where you arrive. It's not a result. And I suppose few of us really achieve it. But we often say that the love is in the trying. So perhaps in forgiveness, forgiveness is trying to be able to firstly overcome your own emotions like anger and resentment and trying to offer the other person things like compassion, kindness, and love, which are all very high ideals. So it makes it really difficult to achieve, but it's something that we can try to do.
Just like a gift, actually, isn't it? Like kindness and compassion and love, they're gifts.
Yeah, they are gifts. And in a way, that's part of the definition as well, that you're actually offering this compassion, kindness, and love to somebody who doesn't actually deserve these gifts.
Oh, okay. So, well, we might just put that aside and talk about that a little bit later in the podcast because, yeah, the undeserving, wow. Let's have a little look at what couple therapy have looked at in forgiveness. And what's struck me actually when I was having a look was that prior to 1985, there was only a handful of studies that were on forgiveness in couples therapy, but then it just sort of exploded after 1985.
Yeah, and I suppose it's hard to explain something like that, but part of my understanding of what is going on there is forgiveness has been one of those things that is part of religions, Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism. But when we're talking about couples therapy and research, we're talking about science. And of course, forgiveness can't be part of the science. But maybe sometime in 1985, somebody went, you know what? There's a science behind forgiveness as well.
And so then the study started. So when I was looking at a sort of an overview of all of the studies, what really struck me was that couples that forgave were happier in their marriage. Couples that forgave were more committed in their marriage. And also, forgiveness was a really important part of conflict resolution for some couples, and we did find that in our own research. So what is it? What is it about these three aspects? And Fincham is actually the researcher that works the most in this. And, you know, he had these findings that said, you know, forgiveness promotes increases in commitment and forgiveness in spouses predicts marital satisfaction. But let's look at satisfaction and happiness first. Why would forgiveness make people more happy? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'm just going to pull it back a little bit because there was so much in what you said there. There was the marital satisfaction, which is kind of another way of saying happiness. There was the idea of stronger commitment, and there was a use of forgiveness as a conflict resolution tool. Now, the thing about all these studies is that they show a positive correlation, that if you forgive somebody, you're happier, you're more committed, you've got less conflict. There wasn't a study that said use forgiveness and your relationship falls apart, or use forgiveness and you're not as happy as you used to be.
Definitely not. Nothing on the negative side, no. It just drew them closer together in all of the studies.
And that's what's significant. The significant thing is, and this is why it became a science, from my point of view, that when you start seeing that something is good for relationships, that becomes knowledge and that becomes science, because using this means that relationships are going to be stronger. So we're talking about the happiness, we're talking about people being more committed, we're talking about using it as a tool to resolve conflict.
So in talking about satisfaction, actually, Christian and I don't like the word satisfaction. We like the word happiness better. It sounds wrong, or, I'm satisfied. It's not as joyful. Let's put it that way.
Good enough, is it? I want my relationship to be happy.
That's right. So let's talk about this one study on happiness and the correlation with forgiveness. So this is actually a study called Forgiveness in Marriage by Kalita and Juskiewicz from 2023, so quite recent, from the Journal of Family Issues. And they did look at 217 coupled individuals that were married 1 to 51 years with an average age of 13 years. And they did find, as a lot of the studies do, that forgiveness of spouse does predict marital satisfaction, let's say marital happiness. But what I found really interesting with this study was that couples that were more forgiving of their spouse, they were more satisfied in other aspects of their marriage too.
Okay. So this is actually what happens when you've been studying something for a while. So we can see that in relationships, forgiveness means more happiness or more satisfaction, as the researchers like. But now it's sort of going, no, it's not just happiness in the marriage, but other aspects of the relationship get better, right? So what aspects of the relationship got better according to this study, Caroline?
Okay, so they said self-realization, intimacy, and similarity. So let's have a look at each of those. Self-realization. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Okay. So I gather that what they mean by that is they got to know more about themselves as well as the other person. So there's something about forgiveness, which means that you've got to reach into yourself and you've got to look into yourself and find something extra to forgive somebody else. So through that, you get to understand, maybe we all make mistakes. Or if we don't make mistakes, then maybe we could make mistakes. And so you start to find out that you as a person are capable of these things that you see in your partner.
I like that idea of self-realization, because we were talking about it earlier, forgiveness as being a gift for the other person, but it seems like it's a gift for yourself too, because you do get to know yourself more and you get to grow more. So that's self-realization too, isn't it?
Oh, actually, that's really good, because you've tied it back to the definition. And in yourself, what you're trying to overcome is your own anger and resentment, all right? So I suppose part of that process is going, I'm really angry, I'm really resentful, I'm a person who can be angry and resentful, so I need to get rid of this as well. So in forgiving somebody else, you're going on a journey inside yourself to improve things and get a hold of some really difficult emotion.
Yeah, and I mean, it does take courage to forgive too, so it's all part of that.
Yeah, it does. And I suppose finding that courage is again looking inside yourself and realizing that I'm a person who can forgive, or I'm a person that can have courage, or I'm a person that can be angry, but I can find the courage to forgive.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are on a sort of a one track, what do I need in this marriage? What do I want? And to forgive, you actually have to put your own needs aside. And that's going to make you grow as a person in more self-realization too, isn't it? Okay,
so that's the self-realization thing, that in having to do something in forgiving somebody else, you go on a journey inside yourself. And I know this all makes common sense. This all sounds very commonsensical, but when we start to pry apart some of the things that are happening in the process of forgiveness, you find that it's a journey not just involving the other person, but also yourself. And self-realization is one of those markers of self-satisfaction in a relationship.
That's right. And then there's intimacy. Obviously, that's going to draw them closer because they've bared their souls and they've come together. There's something about forgiveness in that too, isn't there?
Well, you can imagine that when a wrong is done, when something hurtful happens, the first thing that goes is trust, which is a big part of intimacy. And I suppose for the word intimacy, we're looking at a complete intimacy, a emotional intimacy as well as physical intimacy, and even a mental and spiritual intimacy where I know this person knows me, and we're sharing this journey together. And if somebody does something hurtful, that process stops for a little while, and I suppose forgiveness kickstarts that process to growing together in intimacy.
Well, that's right. It takes away the wall. It takes away the obstacle. It's a real joining together thing. Yeah,
but it's not that easy. It hurts. When somebody hurts you, it hurts. And I just don't want to minimize that, because a lot of people hear about how wonderful forgiveness is, but actually doing it takes that courage and takes that soul searching, and it takes that extension of refinding trust with somebody that you had trust with. And because of the hurt, some of the trust is gone, but to get back in intimacy, forgiveness has to be there.
Absolutely. And the last one is similarity. Now, I was a little bit confused about this. What's your take on similarity?
Well, I suppose in the context of the study, what they would have been looking for, I imagine, is that I'm kind of like you, right? You find out that your partner is another human being, just like you are, capable of mistakes and being hurtful, just like you are. And similarity is a part of self-realization, knowing that, yes, you're a separate person and you have to forgive another separate being, but what you're really forgiving is that flawed humanity that's in all of us. And so in that, forgiving somebody else, you're able to forgive yourself and know things about yourself that perhaps you didn't before. Anyway, I'm not sure about that, but that's the kind of things that I think they were reaching for.
And also, I'm similar to you in that I'm in need of forgiveness also. It's not a one-way street. There's, especially in a relationship, there's things I need to forgive in you, and there's things you need to forgive in me too. Similar, that's right. And I suppose, that actually brought up a really interesting dynamic about forgiveness, because we tend to think that when we've been hurt, we have to forgive somebody else who is the hurter. But when you go through the process of forgiveness and reach inside yourself, you find that you too are capable of hurting somebody, and that you have actually, in fact, hurt the person that has hurt you at the moment. And so it's different degrees, but in going through the process of forgiveness, you reach this idea of similarity, where actually both human beings trying to get through this strange thing called life. Great. Okay, so I think we might leave satisfaction, or our word, happiness. But what is it about forgiveness that makes couples more committed, do you think?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So we haven't spoken about what the process of forgiveness is actually. We've got a definition of it, but how do you actually do it? And maybe one of the dissatisfying things is that it's hard to come up with how to actually forgive. What is the actual process? What do I need to do? How do I actually forgive somebody? So we're going to talk a bit about that. But when we talk about commitment, every time you forgive me, or I forgive you, it means that we've invested more in each other through that process. And just by investing more in that process, it means that I'm committing myself to you, you're committing yourself to me, I am doing this process, and it's taken effort, it's taken a lot of heartache, but we're doing it, but I've done it with you. So that deepens the commitment, because to let go of all of that and to start doing it with somebody else, right, becomes a bit less of an option after you've actually gone through that effort to actually forgive somebody.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's that point. It's always that choice. Will I forgive you, or will I walk away? And as some of the couples said from our Resilient Relationship study, it's easy to walk away. It is, in a way. It's easier to walk away and say, well, I'm not going to forgive you. I'm just going to get on with my life. But and so therefore, you're turning towards them, you're not turning away. So obviously it's going to strengthen the commitment.
Yeah, it is going to strengthen the commitment. And look, when we use the word forgiveness in a couple relationship, we tend to go to the big ones straight away, like somebody who's had an affair, all right, or somebody who's gone back to an addiction, or somebody who has spent all the money or has made a unilateral decision, and all of these things that cut the other person out. But forgiveness is also needed in day-to-day things, in really small things. Some things are not so small, but some things are really small. I mean, do you really need to forgive a person just because they happen to go at a faster pace than you do? Well, in a way you do, because if you want to stay together with them, you have to be in relationship with them all the time. So it's all these little forgivenesses that allow somebody to be who they are, and you not taking control of that, or you're not dictating the terms, that are also part of this idea of strengthening commitment through forgiveness.
I love that so much, because it is so much about the little things. And sometimes forgiveness is a very quiet thing. It's something that you do inside. You're not going to change something from someone's childhood template. You're not going to be able to make inroads with that. But especially if there's something that just rubs against you and it rubs against you and rubs against you and the way that you do things. But there's a moment where inside that you can actually do the forgiveness of those little things, those little things that they do each day, and let them go. We'll talk about the process, but I just wanted to affirm that that's a really good thing.
Oh, yeah, all those things that you find annoying. You know what annoys me about him? You know what annoys me about her? We've all got those things. Well, if we're going to go on living with this person, that means that we forgive those little things that are annoying. If they're bad habits, if they're bad decisions, if they're outright being mean, because we all have the capability of being mean, and even that needs to be forgiven. People often make mistakes by accident, but they often make mistakes on purpose as well. And I suppose this is where the study looked at the similarities, and looking inside yourself. Okay, all right, so that's the thing about intimacy, that forgiveness draws you closer and restores trust if it's been a big breach of trust, or those daily little annoying little breaches of trust.
And the final aspect that the studies look at, and ours do, is forgiveness as a tool for conflict resolution. And we did find it when we ask our couples, what are some of the techniques that you use for conflict resolution? It was number 7 in the top tools that we came up with. So this is from our Resilient Relationship Studies, where we interviewed and surveyed 1,112 coupled individuals. So I just want to share some comments, because I think they might feed into when we talk about the process a little bit of how they use forgiveness as conflict resolution. So this is from Angelica and Graham. Angelica's from Germany and Graham's from Australia. Being able to forgive each other, I think that's one of the biggest things. It's very hard. You have to really work at it. So again, establishing that it's hard. And this is from Sharon and Bob from Australia. You need to learn to forgive quickly, not hold on to things. Don't let things fester. And actually, in a study by Gordon et al. From 2009, they talk a lot about this idea of grudges, and how grudges and holding on to things weakens the bond in relationships.
Yeah, I suppose they do, because you become preoccupied with the negative aspect of the relationship, whereas part of the process, as we'll be able to see, is to let go of those grudges.
Okay, and then the last one I want to share from our couples is from Bev and Alan from the USA. And this is Alan speaking. I get away. I cool down. Then I come back and I tell her I'm sorry. Whether I feel I'm right or wrong, I ultimately say I'm sorry. And well, she forgives me. So I love that as a process. And I love that he says whether I'm right or wrong, So there's some compromise in there. There's some give and take, which we found from the couples too, but very interesting. But there's the apology, there's the forgiveness, there's all of that.
And that comment separates the content. So in other words, this is what I believe was the right thing, while you believe something different, from the process. No, I don't care if I'm right or wrong about this. I just want to be back in relationship with you.
That's a commitment, isn't it? Yeah, that's a turning to each other. Okay. All right. So we've been hinting at process. Let's go into the process now. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. So basically, to summarize, there have been so many studies since 1985 that have shown the benefits of forgiveness to a relationship, particularly to relationship happiness, commitment in a relationship, and using it as a tool for conflict resolution. But how do you do it? What is the process of forgiveness? And a lot of people in Sunday school were taught that you just decide to forgive and you say that you've forgiven and therefore you have forgiven. But as I've witnessed in my office, there are a lot of feelings, very, very intense feelings of resentment, bitterness, and anger that are still there. So this led me to think about the process of forgiveness, and a lot of forgiveness therapists have thought about this, that it's not just a one-off decision. It's a whole process that you need to go through.
Okay, so let's start on the process, because you've obviously helped some of the people that see you with this, and I know that you've been working on it yourself too.
Yes. So I too have had my share of forgiving to do in my life, and helping people who particularly had suffered a lot of abuses as children. They had a lot of forgiving to do, and I wanted to see what actually needed to be done to go through this process. And so when we talk about a process, it means it takes time. It's not just a decision. But decision is the first step in the process. I decide to forgive. I intend to forgive you. That's the first step. It's a decision to go on this journey. It's the rest of it that becomes a lot more difficult. So the second step is looking at what actually happened and accepting that happened. Now, I know that sounds sort of a bit obvious, but the thing is, you'd be surprised how many people are in denial of what happened. Or, oh yes, he'll come back to me someday. Or, this will all work out okay. Or, I wasn't as hurt as I thought that I was. Or, no, I didn't get hurt by that. And that's not accepting what happened. What happened was that somebody did something and it hurt you. That's kind of acceptance. And so we're looking at that as part of the process.
Yeah, accepting is a really, it's a big step to take, because some people don't do their marriage like that. They just like avoiding, and we'll just put that under the carpet and we won't talk about that. And this keeps the peace in the household. You know, we've all got different ways that we approach conflict, or when an incident happens, or even hurt, or even denial of the hurt. You're feeling something inside and you're covering that up.
Yeah, so none of us like conflict, and none of us like bad feelings. And you said that people deny even that anything happened. Well, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, when she looked at the stages of grieving when people needed to accept a diagnosis like cancer, that denial was the first thing that they went through. No, this is not happening to me. And then they will go through all these steps: blaming, bargaining, anger, and all these different things. But the last step was acceptance. To go, no, I've actually got a diagnosis of cancer. This has actually happened. And in psychiatry, we know that you can't move forward until you actually look at what has actually happened, to say, yep, this is what actually has happened. And then you're able to move forward. That's acceptance.
Okay, thank you. So you've given us the first two steps. What's the next step?
All right, the next step is thinking. So understanding. By using your thoughts and your logic and your reason, you try to find an answer to this question. Why would somebody do something like that? And so you might find that it's their personality, it's their upbringing, it's the motivation that they had. But you may look at yourself as well. Did I do anything here? Do I have to take some of the responsibility? Or you might look at the situation. Was it the time? Was it the place that we were in? Was it the situation? Was it very complex? And so you look at all these different factors to try to understand why this actually happened. Because by and large, people don't want to be mean with each other. They actually want to get on. But to understand why these things happen, that's the next stage in the process.
But to understand, obviously, you've got to have gone through the acceptance step, because if you're carrying on to that hurt, there's no way you're going to be able to actually try and understand it, especially if you're part of it. You've actually, been complicit in bringing the incident about.
Yes. And the good thing about understanding is that if you can reach some understanding, you may feel that you've got that feeling of forgiveness right there, because when you understand, it's like that study that you talked about, that you make self-realizations and you notice your similarities and you go, oh, okay, so this person was human just like I am. And when you understand that, it makes it much easier to forgive.
Okay, great. So we've just done understand. What's the next step?
The next step is this wonderful thing called pardoning. Now, teachers can't pardon, they can excuse people, but kings and queens can pardon. Presidents and judges can pardon. Because when you realize that somebody's done something wrong to you and they owe you, that means that you're in a seat of authority. You are in a superior position. And just like a judge can say, I pardon you, I'm going to let you off free, just get out of jail. This is a present from the whole nation to you. I pardon you. You can actually do that because you are in a superior position. Because you see, when you've been hurt, you don't feel that you're in a superior position. You feel that you're in an inferior position. But when you realize that the other person is actually beholden to you, you go, oh, I'm actually in a superior position and I can use that if I want to pardon the person and just let them off the hook.
There's the other side to that, though, because some people do think they're in a powerful position. I'm going to hold that against them for the rest of their life. I'm never going to forgive them for that. And so I'm going to have the one-upmanship in the relationship. There is another side to that.
Yes, there is. That's right. And that side is justice. And if you're the judge, instead of giving the mercy that says, yes, I'm going to pardon you and let you off the hook, it says, no, I'm giving you 20 years for this and you are going in there and you're starting now. And that's justice. And forgiveness is not justice. Forgiveness is the opposite of justice. You're giving a gift to somebody who doesn't deserve the gift. That's what forgiveness is.
Yeah, really interesting. I only brought that up because you said, oh, you don't feel powerful when you've been hurt. But some people then, even bitterness can lead to them just holding it against someone else.
Oh, and you're quite right, because you feel justified, because it's a justice issue, in holding on to your hurt. And what happens then is you end up being a prisoner of your own hurt. You end up being in an emotional bind. You end up holding on to anger, bitterness, and resentment. Then you find, hold it, if I don't forgive here, I'm keeping myself in a bind. So as a present to yourself, as a gift to yourself, you want to find some way to release yourself from these binds that you have with somebody else. And one way to do it, if you choose it, is to forgive them.
Yes, and that gets back to something that we often say is that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself.
Forgiveness is a gift to give yourself. And that's where it happens right there, because if you can forgive somebody, you let them go free, but you're also letting yourself go free of this bind to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Why don't we just forgive and forget?
And I love that, because you're letting yourself go free. They're free. And so you're free just to just enjoy your marriage. You're free not to have those little niggling things underneath, that extra layer that you don't want in the marriage.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so we've done the pardoning. We've gotten there. That's a big one, though. Done the pardoning. What's the next step?
Okay, so I just have to explain that not everybody can pardon. It's actually a very difficult thing to do, and most people look at that step and go, no, can't do it. Okay, it's too difficult. Because the next step is forgiving. So if you see the word forgiving and put a hyphen between for and giving, you will see that you actually have to make a sacrifice. You actually have to give something. It's actually going to hurt you to forgive somebody, because you are relinquishing justice. You are giving somebody a gift who does not deserve it. And remember, that was part of our original definition. And now you're going, okay, so this hurts. Why should I let them off? Why should I do something that costs me? Because forgiving is going to cost you. You're going to have to let go of your right to hold on to that anger, to hold on, if you like, to a grudge.
Yeah, that's going to eat away at you anyway. But So what's the active thing? You said that's a step. So for giving, when you break it down, what is the action? That's not that clear in that.
Yeah, okay. So the action is accepting that this is going to cost you and it's going to hurt you to forgive. That it's a very difficult thing to do and you're going to rail against it. And that makes sense. It's only natural, okay? So it's accepting that you're going to be making a sacrifice of justice, but it's for your own good, because normally we think that when you give something away that you're going to lose something. So if I give you some money, that means that you have some money and I don't. But you can give some things that eventually end up being good for everybody. So if somebody gives away a plant cutting, okay, then all of a sudden there are 2 plants. It'll take about 6 months, but you've given something away, but you haven't lost anything. You've still got your plant. But then if there are things like giving away knowledge, like teachers love giving away knowledge because it can only grow. And there are things like love, wisdom, and compassion and kindness that we talk about as part of the definition of forgiveness. You can give those away to somebody who doesn't deserve it, and you end up growing in it in yourself. It hurts to do it at first, but after you've done it, you go, I've actually given myself a gift here.
Really lovely. Thank you for that. What's the next step?
So now we've got the 2 steps left, because all of that has to do in a way with your thinking and with your will and what you need to do. But now you're left with emotions. All right? You're left with emotions of anger, of resentment, of regret, of grief, or whatever. But you've got these emotions. So the next step is to let go. And the thing that you're actually letting go of is difficult emotions, because you will still feel that anger. It doesn't go away. But if you can let go the same way that you let go of your breath every time you take more air in, you have to let it go or else you're not going to get any more air. That feels good. Or for those who want something a bit more immediate, every time you go to the toilet and get rid of all that water that you've been holding on to, it feels good. It feels good to let go. There's some wonderful relaxing sensations when you let go of something that you've been holding on to tightly.
And letting go brings that peace, doesn't it? It's sort of like, I've let it go. I mean, it needs to be practiced, though. It's not something that comes naturally to us. We want to hold on. We hold on so tightly to this resentment sometimes that we get bruises on our hands.
Oh, that's such a lovely image. The bruises that you get on your hands by hanging on to resentment. Or it's like you've got your hands around somebody's throat saying, you owe me, yeah. Okay? But you've got all this tightness because it's your hands and it's your stress. Whereas if you just let go, sure, they get off scot-free, but you get to let go of all that stress in your hands as well.
All right, so that is letting go. Just letting go.
Yeah, and letting go is an art as well. A lot of fishermen, they're out there and they're there to catch fish. But, every now and again they'll catch a fish that they've got a perfect right to keep, and they'll just let it off the hook and throw it back in again. So they just let it go. Or there's a term in cricket where you just let it go through to the keeper, where instead of bashing at a ball or trying to hit it, you look at it and you go, I'm just going to let this go. And it takes you no effort whatsoever. You just stand there while the ball travels past you. And that's just letting it go through to the keeper.
I do this exercise with my students with breathing, and I think that can be applied here too, where you breathe in all of the tension and everything that you feel, and then you breathe it out and you let it go as you breathe it out. So even using it with the practice of breath, which you started off talking about anyway, breathing in the resentment, feeling it, because you're still going to feel it, as you said, in this step, but then breathing it out and letting it go. You're breathing right now as I'm doing it. Have you got something you need to forgive me for?
I don't know. You tell me.
But yeah, so I think that's a really good thing, even because it's a practicing thing. It's not an easy thing to do, because we just get so caught up in life, and we get battered by the storms that happen, and we don't even have time to work on these things, and they build up, they magnify, don't they? They just snowball sometimes, resentment after resentment after resentment, until you've got this huge mound of unforgiveness.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that as a psychotherapist, I know of no better way of people to let go of their anger, resentment, and all the problems that accumulate in life than forgiveness, because it means you can actually cut yourself free from all of those ties.
So it obviously can be applied to other parts of life, but we're talking about couples here and forgiving each other. Okay, and the last step, please.
The last step is overlooking. So imagine that you've cut the ties, you're in a hot air balloon, and you've cut the ties to all those rocks that are keeping you on the ground. And now you're gently floating up, and you're floating away. And the further and further away that you get from your problems and your day-to-day life, the smaller they look. And then you see that you're part of a much bigger process. You're part of a much bigger land, you're part of mountains, you're part of rivers that flow down to the sea, and your whole life actually has a much bigger meaning, so that if you're able to overlook this transgression and live as though it didn't occur in the first place. Very difficult to do. Please don't think that I've arrived here, because I haven't. But that's the aim, to see that this was just one drop of rain in the whole of your life. And from a high mountain view or up in that air balloon, you can see that it was just one part of life, and that life and this whole world is much bigger than whatever it is that you're holding on to.
And I guess that's the big picture of commitment, isn't it? You're actually going, wow, this is a lifetime thing for me. I'm looking at our whole marriage in these terms, you know. And I also love the idea of the cutting off of the ropes of the hot air balloon and just letting it go. And you're letting someone off the hook there, it seems, but it isn't actually. It's actually freeing them. It's freeing them, and more than that, it's freeing you.
So two people can become free. Let's say in couples therapy, when I've worked with people where there's been infidelity, that's a hard thing to forgive. But if these people see that this is part of a larger journey and that they are going to be together for decades and decades, then not only is this something that they can let go of, but it becomes something that for them can bring them closer, because they have continued on this journey. Now, let's be realistic about infidelity. 50% of infidelities end up in divorce. So it's nothing that I want to recommend to anybody, okay? But that means that 50% don't end up in divorce. And the only way, well, one of the only ways that you can get over something that big is by saying we can use this to bring us closer together, to make us stronger, to realize things about ourselves and each other that we didn't before, so that the big picture, the overall view of our relationship is much better and brighter than we thought it was.
And that reminds me of a couple that I interviewed that had been married for 60-something years. They were Australian, and they had, I think, 10 children. It was phenomenal. And there had been an infidelity. He didn't want to talk about it at all. He alluded to the fact, which I had to confirm later, that there was infidelity. I think he called it a midlife crisis or something, or a hitch or something. And then he said, and I said, and how did you get over that? What was it? You're still together and all of that. And he just looked me in the eye and he said, she gave me forgiveness and compassion. And I mean, yeah, and he had tears in his eyes, and so did she. So it was a gift. It was a gift that she gave him.
And that gift has become part of their journey to humble both of them, right? But become part of their journey so that their relationship became so much more. And again, I'm not saying it becomes more because of the infidelity. It's because of the forgiveness. It's because of that compassion and kindness that's shown to each other through overcoming together something that's really, really difficult.
Yeah, so are we both up in that balloon overlooking it? Who's up in the balloon? Is it just that individual, or are they both up there in a marriage overlooking?
Okay, so when I started looking at the ideas of forgiveness and how to actually put it in place as a process, I looked at it for individuals so that people would see what they needed to do to undergo this enormous task of forgiveness. But of course, in the context of a couple relationship, it's so much more, because as an individual, you can forgive people in your mind and yet never see them again, because forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. But as a couple, you have to reconcile as well. That means that you not only have to forgive, but you've actually got to go on living together. That means seeing each other day to day, and it means seeing each other, knowing what's happened. It means all the steps. It means deciding to forgive, accepting what happened, understanding what happened, pardoning, forgiving, letting go, and overlooking. So in the context of a relationship, it has to be two people in that hot air balloon looking down at what their life has been.
I'm glad you gave us a little bit of a list there too. And harder too, because you're confronted with it every day. Some individuals, you need to forgive a family member that's in another state or something. Well, you don't have to see them every day, but these people are right in front of you. So it is a lot harder, but the rewards are so much greater if you're actually able to get over that hurdle. You go deeper in your relationship, deeper into intimacy and into commitment and into happiness.
Yes, and that's what makes forgiveness so difficult in a relationship context, because the person who has caused you great pain is right in front of you every day. So you can torture yourself with the pain of that, or you can liberate yourself by going through something like this process, because there are a few different processes around in how to approach forgiveness. But this is what I found worked well in my practice for people who had big forgiveness to do, to go through this process so that you are free, so that when you see that person, you actually get to overlook what has happened so that you can live out the big picture.
But it obviously takes time. After whatever's happened, the incident or whatever, it's not going to be an overnight thing. Don't tell me that it's going to be small little things, yeah, and things that you've just got to daily forgive your spouse for, just small things. But then if there's a big incident that happens, it takes time, this process, yeah?
It takes time, and this is where remorse from the wrongdoer is so important, and an apology from the wrongdoer is so important as well, because those sort of things make it easier to forgive. And of course, if you need to apologize, you have to apologize. That's acknowledging somebody's hurt. And a quick apology doesn't work. It has to be a sincere, regretful apology, taking responsibility and trying to make up for things. But then it's not as though you're going to be beholden to the other person forever as well, because that's not forgiveness either. Forgiveness gets you back into equality and that vulnerable trust that you had in each other before an incident. And look, just one more thing I want to say is, if you're able to forgive in small things, if you practice forgiveness in small things, it makes it much easier if anything bigger comes along.
And also thinking about the times when you've been forgiven for things. It mightn't been from your love partner. It might have been from someone else, your parents or a sibling or someone that you've hurt, a good friend in an interpersonal relationship. You could be something like that. So we all need forgiveness in some way.
Yeah, we do. So let's go back to the evidence, because the evidence since 1985, over many, many articles, has shown that forgiveness has positive effects in your relationship, particularly in the areas of your happiness, in the areas of your commitment, and as a conflict resolution tool. That's also what we found in our research. It's also what I found in my private practice, and we find it in our relationship too.
We do. It's not easy. It's not always easy, but especially married to a psychiatrist. But, we have our moments, don't we?
We certainly do.
Okay, so I just have a question or two before we finish off that has come up that I've been thinking about while you've been going through the steps. And one of those is it always important to verbalize? Is it important to say, I forgive you? in a relationship?
So when we're talking about in a relationship, I believe that that's important because that forgiveness needs to be transmitted to the other person. Or if you're not able to forgive, to say, I'm having trouble forgiving you, or I'm on my way, or I'm working on this, because that means that you're in relationship. By sharing your thoughts and your feelings means that you're in relationship. But that brings me to a study that came out recently that shows it's actually actions that are more powerful than words. So if you live in relationship with somebody, so you're still sharing your thoughts and feelings, that shows forgiveness more than you saying, I have forgiven you. So I suppose it's both. It's saying the words so that somebody can hear that or can monitor or know where you're at with those sort of things. But it's in the day-to-day actions as well. And your actions are very important.
It's a kind of a different definition of overlooking too, isn't it? I'm going to overlook that, and I'm going to just keep loving you, and I'm going to forgive you without saying it. And I mean, some of the couples that we interviewed, they didn't have that much verbal communication. They just knew each other so well that a look might say it, a touch might say, I forgive you. It was really beautiful to see. And I mean, we dealt with couples where there was infidelity and there was a touch on the shoulder. It was just like, it's okay, I've forgiven you. We don't need to go there again.
That's true. Everybody has their language and their way of saying things. The only thing that I want to say as a therapist is there's a difference between not verbalizing something and sweeping it under the carpet. Like, let's just avoid this as though it didn't happen. Pretending it hasn't happened is not the same as overlooking. Overlooking has gone through the acceptance period where we know what happened. I know you, you know me, but I'm going to overlook this means that even though I don't verbalize it, you can feel that I still have my love, compassion, and kindness for you.
Yes, so true, and so important to make that distinction because, I mean, you can sweep it under the table and still be feeling the hurt, and I guess that's one of the things that you'll know. If you've still got the hurt there, then you haven't dealt with it.
If you sweep too many things under the carpet, it's hard to walk over the carpet.
Gets lumpy, doesn't it? Very, very lumpy, and you have to deal with that. Yes, very important to deal with it so that you go closer. I think we just might finish the podcast there. There are other questions I'm sure you have, but we've got a book. Christian's got a book called The 7 Steps to Forgiveness, where he outlines this in a lot of detail. It's called The 7 Steps to Forgiveness Using Neuroplasticity. So there's more detail there if you want to have a look at that. I'll put the link at the bottom of this episode. We'll be back in about another month or so with more relationship talk on resilient relationships. And we do hope that you join us there. Remember, we've always got our website where we've got lots of other resources that may help you with your relationship and, of course, our book. Until then, take care of yourselves. And remember, your relationship is your greatest asset. We'll see you soon.
Take care.